What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review the new movie Hitman, starring Glen Powell and directed by Richard Linklater. I just saw it at a press screening up at the New York Film Festival, and holy shit, this movie was absolutely delightful. I laughed hysterically probably like 30 or 40 times. It was just effortlessly entertaining. It was just an absolute blast, and this movie had not been on my radar at all. I knew it did pretty well at Toronto, and I believe it also played at Venice. And Netflix scooped it up for like $20 million. And so far, I don't believe Netflix has determined what the release date is going to be. But they are planning on doing a theatrical play in addition to the streaming play. And well-deserved, because I feel like this movie could play very well theatrically. But it's just it was a rare moment where I had no like emotions going into it, and I was just happily surprised by the movie on screen. Usually, whether I love a movie or I hate a movie, it's been on my radar for a long time, and I've been kind of like wrestling with the trailers and that sort of thing. But there is no trailer for Hitman. There's not even a poster for Hitman at this point, which actually has me a little nervous, because usually when I record my reviews, I rant like a crazy person, and then I go back and I edit out all the stuttering, and I edit out all just the inane comments that I'm making, and then I'll use images from either like the poster or the trailer to kind of cover up where all the flaws in my video are. But because I have no marketing materials to work with, I more or less just have to kind of let this review rip, which has got me a little nervous, because I'm walking on a tightrope without a safety net. But it's going to be very easy to do this video, because I'm just going to gush about how much I love the movie. But if you're anything like me and this movie is off your radar, here are the kind of vital stats that you need to know ahead of time, and I'm ripping this straight from Wikipedia. Hitman is a 2023 American action comedy film co-produced and directed by Richard Linklater and starring Glen Powell, both of whom wrote the screenplay based on the 2001 Texas Monthly Magazine article of the same name by Skip Hollandsworth. It also stars Adria Arjona, I hope I'm saying her name correctly. In the film, an undercover Houston police officer poses as a reliable hitman until he tries to save a woman in need. And I should also add that this movie is more or less, kind of, sort of, based on true events, but the movie acknowledges the liberties that it takes with the story. But holy shit, from the moment this movie started to the moment it ended, even after it ended, when it started giving us information during the closing credits, I was just like beaming with smiles and laughter and just having the world's greatest time from start to finish. And even though the movie feels incredibly modern in terms of its look and its approach, like nothing about this movie feels like it could take place in any other year other than 2023. And yet, it had this weird, unmistakable charm that I associate with a lot of the screwball comedies and romantic comedies of the 1930s, where you would see actors like Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant reuniting again and again and again in movies like Holiday and Bringing Up Baby and Philadelphia Story, and just kind of creating all these insane stories where both stars got to hog the spotlight and act like complete and total lunatics and also fall in love in the process. And I think this movie definitely owes a small debt of gratitude to those classic screwball comedies, classic romantic comedies. And if I get my way, Glen Powell and Adria Arjona, once again, I'm sure I'm screwing that up. I hope they'll team up again, because their chemistry is so undeniable. Every once in a while you're watching a movie, the stars have such an obvious case of mutual attraction that it just becomes undeniable, and you just feel like you're falling in love yourself by watching the story as it unfolds. So even though I would not say this movie is a romantic comedy, it might be the best goddamn romantic comedy that I've seen in like a decade. I just absolutely fucking love this. But on the surface, it's quite a different movie. We have an academic who teaches like philosophy to a bunch of college students, and as a part-time gig, he works for the cops, and he helps them with one of their undercover cops who's always trying to, I guess, lure out or tease out people that may be in the interest or may be in the market for hiring a hitman to kill their spouse or their parent or their boss or their girlfriend or their boyfriend, whatever the case might be. But one day, the cop who usually handles those duties, he can't. So Glen Powell has to step up and do so himself. And as it turns out, he has an absolute knack for it, because through his academic rigor, he's able to, I guess, like, not read the minds of the possible suspect, but he's able to kind of study him in a way and size them up quickly, trying to figure out what is the hitman that I need to be to make them feel confident and comfortable so they will divulge everything that they're up to. And as a result, he starts taking on all these assumed identities to help lure people out, or kind of like lure people out of the shadows and make confessions. And I was just screaming with laughter because when you look at Glen Powell, you think, oh, this guy, he's ruggedly handsome and he must just be like a pretty boy douchebag. Like my usual default position with somebody as attractive as Glen Powell is to say, well, I just got to hate him to my dying breath. But there's no way anybody's going to be able to hate Glen Powell after seeing this movie. I think a lot of people are going to say, oh, he's my new favorite fucking movie star. Like he's got all the charm and looks of like Brad Pitt back in the 90s when he was doing things like True Romance. And for years at this point, I've been seeing Glen Powell pop up in things. Like he popped up in Everybody Wants Some, a previous movie by Richard Linklater where he played a much smaller role. And if you have not seen Everybody Wants Some, definitely hunt it down. And Glen Powell's particularly good in it. And then I guess I really started to take notice of him in Top Gun Maverick. I was like, God damn, like if Tom Cruise and Miles Teller, if they weren't hogging the spotlight, like Glen Powell could clearly, easily be the star of this movie. But I have a feeling the offers and the roles are going to be coming his way fast and furious moving forward. And if he can do double duty as a screenwriter with filmmakers like Richard Linklater, who the hell knows what vehicles he might concoct on his own behalf. But it helps when you're working with a director like Richard Linklater, who's been doing great stuff since Slacker, like 91 or 92, whenever the hell that movie was. 90. So when I first got into college in the fall of 95, Richard Linklater was at that time like one of the big indie darlings out there. He had done Slacker and he'd done Dazed and Confused. And Dazed and Confused had been this instant overnight cult classic. And I've seen it, 1,000 times. I mean, I can quote that movie from start to finish. But then he pivoted and he started doing all these art house movies like the Before trilogy. And obviously the Before trilogy unfolded over many years, but Before Sunrise, 1995, people absolutely loved it. And then in 2001, we had the rotoscope animated movie Waking Life. I was like, whoa, like where did that come from? And it seemed like with every movie that he made, he was trying to reinvent himself. And there are a ton of these movies that I've not seen. I've never seen Tape. I've never seen the Newton Boys, but every once in a while I would see something like Fast Food Nation or A Scanner Darkly. Bernie I've never seen. I understand Bernie's incredible. Boyhood, I mean, that was that crazy 12-year experiment where he had to shoot the movie in pieces over 12 years' time, but that was just an amazing experiment. But then you'll have stinkers that just kind of vanish from sight and no one talks about. Like movies like Where'd You Go, Bernadette, which came right after Last Flag Flying, which I also coincidentally saw at the New York Film Festival 6 years ago, and I really enjoyed that as well. But what I really like about Richard Linklater's movies, as well as just when he's presenting old school classics at like the Austin Film Society and that sort of thing, I feel like his films reflect him and his personality and his persona very, very well, because he's got this cool kind of laid back Southern charm or Texas charm. I mean, you watch him in interviews, like, goddamn, like that guy's got his laid back drawl, and he is just like, he's cool as a cucumber, but you can tell he's also like, he looks at everything with fresh eyes and has this insatiable curiosity. And he's also like, he knows his shit when it comes to film history. I feel like he's just old enough where he was able to kind of catch the wave of the late 50s and the 60s and early 70s when it came to European art house cinema and Japanese art house cinema. And from the late 50s to the early 70s, it was a very easy time to fall in love with filmmakers from Japan and from Sweden and from France and from Germany. It was a great time for art house cinema finally being distributed in America, and you get the sense of Richard Linklater to the present day still just like soaking it up, eating it up. And anytime you hear him talking about movies, he makes all these fantastic, fascinating references to some of the best classic movies from like 50, 60 years ago. But much like his movies, he's able to have these conversations without coming across as pretentious. Most people who watch like European art house cinema exclusively can come across as pretentious douchebags or just windbags or people who are too in love with the sound of their own voice, like people who leave YouTube reviews for movies, etc., and so forth. But man, he is just so unassuming and so modest and so cool. I defy anybody to watch Richard Linklater in an interview and not come away with a positive impression. And same holds true for Hitman, which I think is going to go down as one of Linklater's most accessible, most enjoyable movies that he's ever made. So what can I say without giving anything away? Like I said, the trailer's not even out yet. It's played at a few festivals, and Netflix, I'm sure, is trying to figure out like what is the best timing to release this movie. And usually Netflix trailers don't release that far in advance of an actual release date, so they could like release the trailer in a couple weeks and then release it in November. But holy shit. All right, so non-spoiler praise for this. Maybe I haven't said enough yet about Adria Arjona, who I first saw in Irma Vep, where she played a very different kind of character, where she was so mysterious and confident and sexy. I mean, she was playing like this massive celebrity who had kind of gotten inside the head of yet another celebrity. And it's just a very different role where I was like, goddamn, she is astonishingly beautiful. But I didn't understand her range until I saw this, where she is so goddamn fun. I mean, Glen Powell obviously is the star of this movie, but he needs a dance partner. And there's one scene where all I'll say is the two of them are basically like playing roles within roles in the context of the scene, where the chemistry and the dialogue, everything was performed so, like, to such a degree of perfection. I could feel the audience having to repress the urge to leap to their feet and offer a standing ovation then and there. And if you follow my channel for a while, you know that periodically I like throwing the occasional dagger at critics, because I find that critics on the whole tend to be a rather humorless, mirthless, joyless, sexless bunch. But not today. I mean, this was a press screening at the New York Film Festival. Nothing but snobs filling the entire room, and they were screaming with laughter. I mean, they were roaring with laughter. You could tell the crowd was just having a fucking blast. I could hear people whistling at the end of the movie. I might have been one of the people whistling, but there were definitely a few other people whistling as well. And even though this movie shares a lot of ingredients with like a classic like kind of police procedural, where you've got a team of cops that are trying to take down people who are trying to hire hitmen to kill their significant others. And I must say, the chemistry and the characters within like the kind of the police squad, I don't know what the proper terminology is, but the team of cops working together to take down the bad guys, they're incredible. All brilliant character actors, so much great chemistry, so much great camaraderie, so many great laughs. I loved watching them in action. But what adds, I guess, an additional layer or structure to this movie is that because the character played by Glen Powell is an academic, we get to sit in on his lectures. And I have to say, like, I would kill to be able to attend that class for a semester. There's some of the most enjoyable parts of the movie where he's talking about fucking philosophy and like ancient Greek philosophers and that sort of thing. He's talking about basically like the nature of identity and like to what degree do we become the person that we're pretending to be? Because obviously he's a guy who's taking on many disguises in his part-time work for the police. But at a certain point, like after you've invested a certain number of hours into that person, like how much of that new role it's kind of permanently imprinted on you. And I just found all these discussions and all these kind of theories on his part to be absolutely fascinating. And I said it before and I'll say it again, but Glen Powell's range in this is going to astonish a lot of people, where he can go from being like the world's biggest goober, both in terms of his speech and his hairstyle and how he dresses, to being like the coolest, slickest, most confident, sexiest fucking hitman you've ever seen. Like everyone who sees this movie, they're all going to fall in love with Glen Powell, irrespective of where their sexual preferences might be. I mean, he is just, it's a smoldering type of, I guess, sexual confidence that he exudes in this. But once again, it helps when you're acting opposite Adria Arjona, because she is just so unimaginably hot in this. I mean, I know I'm supposed to say pretty or beautiful, but she is just sexy as fucking shit. And people are going to be looking at her with fresh eyes as well moving forward. But I don't know what else I can say. Apart from just saying at this point, I think we need to acknowledge that Richard Linklater is one of the best American directors. If you make a couple of good movies, well, then you're one of the best directors working in an individual territory or country. But if you're able to sustain an incredible filmography for well over 30 years, well, then you're in Hall of Fame status. Like, I think a lot of people might say, well, what is his masterpiece? Like, what are his great movies that you can place on the level of, like, you know, whatever your favorite movies might be? I don't know if he's got any one standalone movie, but I feel like a lot of people regard Before Sunrise that way. A lot of people regard Dazed and Confused that way, just due to how often they quote it at parties and that sort of thing. But I think at a certain point, if you're a musician or if you're an author and you've got a giant body of work where the great majority of it is really good, well, then I have to give credit where credit is due and put respect on his name. Richard Linklater is one of the best American directors. And I always think of him as being like perpetually 25 or 30 years old, because he has such a youthful energy when he's having conversation with people. And he directs his movies with such a youthful energy. But I'm going to check right now. It's not. Oh, he's born in 1960. So the man is, at this point, officially 63 years old. That's just terrifying. In any event, I hope I've helped place Hitman on people's radar. Because it's coming to Netflix, it wouldn't surprise me at all if it fucking takes off like a rocket. But I do think it should enjoy a nice limited theatrical run ahead of time. I know that's not Netflix's business, but this movie is so enjoyable, it would be criminal not to give it a theatrical run. Did I say festival earlier? Anyway, I'm got to be careful when usually if I say the wrong word, I can just go back and re-record, but I'm trying to have as few cuts and as few edits as humanly possible. But holy crap, the New York Film Festival continues to go from strength to strength. I've been very lucky. I think I've seen 8 movies so far. So I've saw Anatomy of a Fall, which won the Golden Palm. I saw Pedro Almodovar's new Western short. I saw The Zone of Interest from director Jonathan Glazer. Saw Hayao Miyazaki's new movie, The Boy and the Heron, which I haven't even found time to review yet. Like, I'm seeing movies so frequently, I can't even find time to make videos about everything that I'm seeing. Saw The Pigeon Tunnel by Errol Morris, which I really enjoyed. Then last week, or Friday, I saw May December from director Todd Haynes. I haven't had time to review that either, which is also coming to Netflix. And I also saw Poor Things from director Yorgos Lanthimos. So it's like, God damn, like, how many good movies am I going to see before this festival's over? And I still have Michael Mann's Ferrari to look forward to. I've got Bradley Cooper's film Maestro. And I've got a movie from director Harmony Korine, and I'm blanking on the name of that. But I'm seeing that tomorrow. So anyway, a lot of cool stuff to look forward to. And I look forward to giving you a full report when all is said and done. So thank you so much for sticking with me through this random, rambling, kind of a chaotic review. I greatly appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking the channel or liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell, and hunting me down on Twitter at Colbrex if you want to talk more about director Richard Linklater or how sexy you find Glen Powell to be. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.